I'm Camilla, 36 female. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood that always felt like a little bubble of calm in a chaotic world. I've worked as a paralegal for the same family law firm for over a decade, and my life was built on predictable routines and a belief in order. My husband, Leo, was the opposite, a financial advisor who thrived on risk and grand gestures, but I thought we balanced each other out. This is the story of how I discovered that the man I trusted to build a future with had not only dismantled our present, but had also committed a felony to do it, leaving me stranded and forcing me to use my professional skills to reclaim my life. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The week leading up to my trip had been unusually tense. Leo had been glued to his phone, taking hushed calls in his home office and snapping at me whenever I asked who he was talking to. He'd wave it off as market volatility or a demanding client, explanations that used to soothe me but now felt thin and worn. He was a financial advisor, so stress was part of the job, but this felt different. There was a frantic energy about him, a desperation that clung to his expensive suits like cheap cologne. He was more charming than usual, overly affectionate in a way that put my teeth on edge. He made my favorite dinner twice that week, something he hadn't done in years, and kept talking about a big deal that was about to close. He said once it did, all our worries would be over. We'd take that trip to Italy we'd always dreamed of. It was a beautiful picture, but the frame was cracked. My trip to visit my parents was a long-standing tradition. They lived about 100 miles away in the small town where I grew up. It was my bi-monthly escape, a chance to breathe country air and reconnect with the person I was before I became Mrs. Camilla Hernandez. Leo usually drove me, but this time he insisted I take our shared car, a reliable 5-year-old Honda CR-V that was completely paid off. "You need the freedom," he'd said, kissing my forehead. "Don't worry about me. I'll just use ride shares for the weekend. It's no big deal." It felt like another one of his grand, slightly performative gestures, but I was too exhausted from the tension at home to argue. A weekend of my mom's cooking and my dad's terrible jokes was exactly what I needed. On Friday afternoon, I packed my overnight bag, placing it in the back of the Honda. Leo came out to the driveway, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Drive safe, honey," he whispered, his voice a little too tight. "Call me when you get there." I promised I would, giving him a quick kiss before getting in the car. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw him in the rearview mirror, still standing there, watching me go. There was an expression on his face I couldn't quite decipher. Not sadness, not relief, but something else. Something unsettling. I shook it off, blaming my own anxiety. I was just tired. The open road and my family would fix everything. The drive was peaceful. I turned up the radio, singing along to old songs and letting the city shrink behind me. The further I got from home, the lighter I felt. The knot of anxiety in my stomach began to unwind with every mile marker I passed. I arrived at my parents' house just as the sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over their familiar little cottage. My mom enveloped me in a hug that smelled like cinnamon and safety, while my dad patted my shoulder, his quiet way of saying he was glad I was home. The weekend was a blur of comfort. We worked in the garden, I helped my mom bake a pie, and my dad and I sat on the porch swing, talking about everything and nothing. I called Leo on Friday night as promised. He sounded distracted but cheerful. "Having a great time, babe, don't you worry about a thing back here. Everything's under control." On Saturday, he sent a few texts filled with heart emojis, saying he missed me. It was all so normal, so perfectly loving, that I started to feel guilty for my earlier suspicions. Maybe he really was just stressed about work. Maybe I was the one creating problems where there were none. I resolved to be a more supportive wife when I got back. I'd be less suspicious, more trusting. I'd believe in the Italy trip. Sunday afternoon came too quickly. After a final, lingering lunch, I packed my things back into the car. My mom stuffed a container of leftovers into my bag, and my dad checked my tire pressure. "You call us when you get home," he said, his hand on the car door. "Don't forget." I promised I wouldn't. I hugged them both one last time, feeling that familiar pang of sadness at leaving. As I pulled away, waving until their house was just a speck in my rearview mirror, I felt recharged. The weekend had worked its magic. I was ready to go home, ready to be the wife I thought Leo deserved. The drive home started just as peacefully as the drive there. The sun was bright, the traffic was light, and my playlist was perfect. I was about halfway home, maybe 50 miles out, when my phone rang. It was Leo. I smiled, tapping the hands-free button on my steering wheel. "Hey, you," I said cheerfully. "I'm on my way, should be home in about an hour." There was a pause on the other end, filled with a strange, static-like silence. Then his voice came through, strained and unnatural. "Camilla," he said, "there's something I have to tell you." The tone of his voice was an instant alarm bell. It was the same tone he'd used when he had to tell me his father passed away, a carefully controlled monotone that barely concealed a torrent of emotion underneath. My heart started to beat a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Leo, what is it? Is everything okay?" I imagined a dozen scenarios in a split second: a fire at the house, a health scare, a family emergency. Never in any of them did I imagine what he said next. "About the car," he started, and I could hear him take a shaky breath. "There's been a change of plans." I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. "A change of plans? What are you talking about? I'm driving the car right now." I could see the blue and white sign for a rest stop a mile ahead and instinctively flicked my blinker on, my mind struggling to process his words. Something was terribly wrong. "Oh, that's the thing," he said, his voice dropping. "You need to pull over, Camilla. You can't bring the car home." "Pull over? Leo, you're not making any sense. What is going on?" I guided the Honda into the rest stop parking lot, finding a spot far away from the other vehicles. I shut off the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening. "Just tell me what happened." There was another long pause, and then the words tumbled out in a rush, as if he'd been practicing them. "I sold it. I sold the car. The new owner is coming to pick it up from you." I blinked, staring at the dashboard. It felt like he was speaking a foreign language. What? You sold it? Leo, that's impossible. This is our only car. The title is in both our names. How could you sell it?" He sighed, a sound heavy with a weariness that felt completely manufactured. "It was an emergency, Camilla. A financial thing. This big deal I was telling you about, it needed a little more liquidity to get over the finish line. I got a great price for the car, a cash offer. It's all going to be worth it, I promise. We'll buy a better car next month, a brand new one." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Every word he said was a hammer blow, shattering the carefully constructed reality of our life together. A cash offer. Liquidity. He was talking about our car, our life, like it was a stock portfolio to be managed. "Where am I supposed to go, Leo?" My voice was dangerously quiet. "I am 50 miles from home. You sold the car out from under me while I was driving it." I know, the timing is terrible," he said, his tone shifting to one of placating a difficult child. "But the buyer was insistent. He's on his way to you now. He'll be at the Mill Creek rest stop in about 20 minutes, just give him the keys. He'll give you cash for a bus ticket home." A bus ticket. He had sold our shared property, our means of transportation, and was offering me the dignity of a bus ticket home. The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. A cold, hard fury began to build in the pit of my stomach, eclipsing the shock and hurt. "You forged my signature, didn't you?" I asked, the question hanging in the air like a death sentence. As a paralegal, I knew procedures. A vehicle title with 2 owners listed as and requires both signatures for a legal sale. There was no other way. He didn't answer immediately. The silence was his confession. "Camilla, don't be so dramatic," he finally said, his voice turning sharp and defensive. "It was a necessity. I signed for you. It's not a big deal. We're married. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine, right?" The casual way he admitted to committing a felony was staggering. He didn't see it as a crime. He saw it as an inconvenience he had to manage. He saw me as an obstacle he had to navigate. In that moment, 10 years of marriage evaporated into nothing. The man on the other end of the phone was a stranger, a con artist who had been wearing my husband's face. "A man will be there in 20 minutes, he repeated, his voice now firm, as if giving an order. "His name is Mike. He's driving a blue pickup truck. Give him the keys, take the money, and get on a bus. We will talk about this when you get home." And then he hung up. I sat in the car, phone in my hand, listening to the dial tone. The quiet of the rest stop was broken only by the distant hum of the highway and the pounding in my ears. I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching a scene from a movie. The woman sitting in this car couldn't possibly be me. My life wasn't this chaotic, this ugly, but it was. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was pale, my eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and a slowly burning rage. He hadn't just sold a car. He had sold our trust, our partnership, and my safety. He had left me stranded 50 miles from anywhere and expected me to meekly hand over the keys and shuffle onto a bus like a scolded child. The helplessness of it all washed over me, a cold and terrifying wave. I was alone. But then the fury returned, sharper and more focused this time. He thought I would just roll over. He thought he could handle me. He had forgotten who I was. I wasn't just his wife. I was a paralegal. I knew the law, and he had just handed me a loaded gun. My mind, usually a calm sea of case files and legal statutes, was now a raging storm. But amidst the chaos, my training kicked in. Emotion was a liability, facts were ammunition. I needed facts. I watched the minutes tick by on the car's clock. 15 minutes until Mike arrived. 15 minutes to move from victim to strategist. My first instinct was to call my best friend, Sophia. I needed an anchor, someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. I fumbled with my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. "Hey Cam, how was the weekend? Are you back yet?" Her cheerful voice was a painful contrast to the wreckage of my reality. "Sophia," I said, my own voice sounding thin and reedy. "Something's happened, something bad." I quickly explained the situation. The phone call from Leo, the sale of the car, the forged signature, the man who was supposedly on his way to collect the keys. I relayed it all in the clipped, precise language I used for case summaries at work. A defense mechanism against the overwhelming emotion threatening to drown me. Sophia was silent for a moment, and I could practically hear her processing the information, her teacher brain organizing the facts. "Okay," she said, her voice dropping into a calm, serious tone. "First of all, are you safe?" "Yes," I said. "I'm at a public rest stop. It's well lit." But Sophia, he admitted it. He admitted to forging my name. "He's a fool, Camilla," she said with a venom that was deeply comforting. "An arrogant, criminal fool. Now listen to me. Do not, under any circumstances, give that man the keys. That car is still legally half yours until a title is properly transferred. You are not obligated to participate in your husband's felony." Her words were like a splash of cold water. She was right. This wasn't just a marital dispute anymore. This was a crime. "What do I do?" I asked, feeling a sliver of control return. "Don't engage with the buyer. If he shows up, stay in your car and lock the doors. If he approaches you, tell him the sale is invalid and that you are calling the police. But first, you need proof. You need official confirmation of what you already know." That's when the idea solidified. It wasn't enough to know Leo had forged my name. I needed the state to know it. "The DMV," I said out loud. "I need to call the Department of Motor Vehicles." "Exactly," Sophia affirmed. "It's Sunday, so their main offices are closed, but there might be a general helpline, or I can look up the number for the state police non-emergency line." "No, wait," I said, my mind racing. I remembered from a case a few years back that our state's DMV had an automated system for title and registration inquiries that was available 24/7. It was designed for dealerships and law enforcement, but public access was possible if you had the right information. I had all the information: the VIN, the license plate number, our names and address. I ended the call with Sophia, promising to keep her updated and to call 911 if I felt remotely threatened. Then, I took a deep breath and navigated to the DMV website on my phone. I found the automated records inquiry line and dialed. A robotic voice answered, guiding me through a series of prompts. "To check the status of a vehicle title transfer, please enter the 17-digit vehicle identification number." I read the VIN from the sticker on the driver's side door, my voice steady. I entered the plate number. Then, the system asked me to verify the seller's information. I entered Leo's name and date of birth. Finally, it asked for the second seller's information. I entered my own. The system paused, the digital silence stretching for an eternity. Then, the robotic voice delivered the verdict. A request for title transfer for this vehicle was filed on Friday, September 5th. The transfer is currently pending verification of all required signatures. The document on file shows signatures for Leonardo Hernandez and Camila Hernandez. Friday. He had filed the paperwork the day I left. He had planned this. He had smiled and kissed me goodbye, knowing he had already signed my name O. And a document that would strip me of our shared asset. The automated voice confirmed the final, damning detail. Because the owners were listed as Leonardo Hernandez and Camila Hernandez, the transfer could not be legally completed without dual notarized signatures. The document he filed must have included a forged, and likely illegally notarized, signature. The confirmation was cold, impersonal, and absolutely concrete. It was no longer his word against mine. It was his signature, my forged signature, against the law. I saved a screenshot of the digital confirmation page. Then, another piece of the puzzle slid into place. A forged signature on a legal document like a title is one thing, but to be accepted by the DMV, it often needs to be notarized. A notary's seal confirms the identity of the signer. If he had gotten it notarized, it meant he had either found a criminally negligent notary or, more likely, had a friend who was a notary and was willing to break the law for him. The conspiracy was potentially wider than just Leo. A blue pickup truck rumbled into the parking lot, pulling into the spot directly opposite mine. A man who fit Leo's brief description, middle-aged, stocky, wearing a baseball cap, got out and looked directly at my car. This was Mike. My heart leaped into my throat, but the anger quickly smothered the fear. I put my phone down, took a deep breath, and prepared myself. He had no idea who he was dealing with. He thought he was coming to pick up a car. He was actually walking into evidence of a felony, and I was going to be the one to document it. The man, Mike, approached my window with a confident stride. I pressed the lock button on my door, the click echoing in the tense silence of the car. He tapped on the glass, a friendly, expectant smile on his face. I lowered the window just a crack, enough to speak but not enough to create any vulnerability. "Camilla?" he asked. "I'm Mike. Leo sent me for the CRV. There's been a misunderstanding," I said, my voice as level and firm as I could make it. "This vehicle is not for sale." Mike's smile faltered. He looked confused, then annoyed. "What are you talking about? I paid the man $10,000 in cash this morning. He said you'd have the keys and the signed title ready for me." $10,000. That was a surprisingly low number for our car, which was easily worth $15,000 in the current market. Leo hadn't just been deceptive, he'd been desperate. He'd taken a lowball offer for quick cash. "The title you have is fraudulent," I stated calmly, my paralegal training taking over. "My signature was forged. The sale is illegal. I'd advise you to contact Leo to get your money back because you will not be taking this car." I could see the gears turning in Mike's head as he processed my words. The annoyance on his face curdled into anger. "Now, listen here, lady. I have a deal. I paid my money. That's your husband's signature and yours right there on the title." "No," I corrected him. "That is my husband's signature and a forgery of my name. If you attempt to take this vehicle, I will call the police and report it as stolen. Furthermore, you will be implicated in the possession of property obtained through illegal means." I let the legal jargon hang in the air. His eyes widened slightly. He was a simple buyer, likely looking for a good deal on Craigslist and had just stumbled into a legal minefield. He was angry, but he wasn't stupid. "This is ridiculous," he grumbled, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling Leo." "Please do," I said, then rolled my window up completely. I watched him stalk back to his truck, phone pressed to his ear. I couldn't hear his words, but his furious gestures told the whole story. After a few minutes, he shot my car a venomous glare, got back into his truck, and sped out of the rest stop. Phase 1 was complete. I was still in possession of the car, but I was still stranded, and now I was armed with a terrible truth. I called Sophia back. "He's gone," I told her. "He mentioned he paid Leo $10,000 in cash." "10 grand?" she gasped. "Cam, that car is worth way more. Leo must be in some serious trouble to undersell it like that." We agreed on a new plan. I couldn't drive the car home, because if Leo got desperate, he might report it stolen himself, creating a messy he said, she said situation with the police. The safest place for the car, and for me, was back at my parents' house. I called my dad, my voice finally breaking as I explained the barest bones of the situation, that Leo and I were having serious issues and I needed him to come get me. I didn't mention the felony yet. It was too much to explain over the phone. As always, he didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'm on my way, sweetie. I'll be there in an hour." While I waited, my mind went into overdrive. The $10,000. Where did it go? Leo's talk of liquidity and a big deal sounded like something he would say to cover a gambly. NG debt or a bad investment. Our finances were mostly separate, a pragmatic choice we made early on because of our different approaches to money. I handled the household bills from a joint account we both contributed to, but our personal savings and credit were our own. This separation, which I once thought was just practical, now seemed like a godsend. I had access to my own money, my own credit. He couldn't touch it, but what had he done with his? Sitting in the rest stop parking lot, I logged into our joint bank account on my phone. My heart sank. The account, which should have had a few $1,000s for the mortgage and utilities, was nearly empty. He had drained it. There was a series of large ATM withdrawals over the past 2 weeks, all for the maximum daily limit. He had been systematically bleeding our shared finances dry. But the real shock came when I used a shared password to log into his personal credit card account. I had never done it before. It felt like a violation of privacy. But his actions had voided any right to privacy he had. The statement was a roadmap of his deceit. There were charges from expensive restaurants I'd never been to, hotel bookings in a city an hour away, and multiple payments to a high-end jewelry store. And then I saw the recurring charges, the ones that made my blood run cold. There were dozens of payments, stretching back nearly a year to online sports betting websites. Thousands upon thousands of dollars. It wasn't a one-time bad investment. It was a severe, long-term gambling addiction. The big deal he needed liquidity for wasn't a stock market play. It was a desperate, final bet to win back everything he had lost. He hadn't just sold our car. He had gambled away our security, our savings, and our future, all while whining and dining someone else. My father's familiar old truck pulled into the rest stop just as I was uncovering the last piece of his betrayal. When he saw my face, his gentle expression hardened. He wordlessly helped me transfer my bags from the CRV to his truck, then followed me as I drove the Honda back to their house. The car was now evidence. We parked it in their garage, out of sight. That evening, I sat at my parents' kitchen table and told them everything. The lies, the gambling, the other woman who was undoubtedly the recipient of the jewelry, and the felony forgery of the car title. My mother cried, but my father, a retired mechanic who believed in fixing what was broken, just looked at me with grim determination. "Well," he said, placing his large, calloused hand over mine, "he made a mess. Now we figure out how to clean it up." The first step was clear. I wasn't just leaving my husband. I was going to dismantle his life with the same cold, legal precision he had used to try and dismantle mine. The paper trail he'd left was a noose, and I was going to be the one to tighten it. The next morning, I woke up with a chilling clarity. The grief and shock were still there, simmering beneath the surface, but they were now fuel for a cold, calculated fire. I was not a heartbroken wife. I was a paralegal with a case to build. My parents' home became my command center. I set up my laptop on their dining room table, the scent of my mom's coffee filling the air as I began my work. My first official act was to protect myself. I logged into my own bank accounts and changed all my passwords. I called my credit card companies and put a fraud alert on my accounts, ensuring Leo couldn't try to open any new lines of credit in my name. I systematically removed his access from every shared digital service we had, from streaming platforms to our online grocery delivery. It was a small, petty act of severing ties, but it felt immensely satisfying. Each password change was a brick being laid in the wall I was building between his chaos and my new life. My next call was to my boss, Mr. Davison, the senior partner at the family law firm where I worked. He was a sharp, no-nonsense man in his 60s who had been a mentor to me for years. I requested a personal day, my voice carefully neutral, but he could hear the strain. "Is everything all right, Camilla?" he asked, his tone softening. I decided to tell him the truth. I gave him the professional summary. My husband had illegally sold a jointly owned asset by forging my signature on the title, and I had uncovered evidence of significant financial infidelity and gambling debts. I needed the day not for personal reasons, but to strategize my own legal action. He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Take the week. And when you're ready, I want you to come into my office. We'll handle this in-house. He won't know what hit him." His immediate, unwavering support was a lifeline. I now had the full resources of a respected law firm behind me. With Mr. Davison's blessing, I began to formally assemble my evidence. I printed out the bank statements from the joint account showing Leo's systematic withdrawals. I print the credit card statements with the damning charges for hotels, jewelry, and online betting sites. I wrote a detailed, chronological affidavit of the events of the weekend. From Leo's insistence, I take the car to the phone call at the rest stop and the confrontation with the buyer, Mike. Every detail was recorded, dated, and timed. My work as a paralegal had trained me to be meticulous, to see a story not as a wash of emotion, but as a collection of verifiable facts. Fact 1, Leo committed felony title forgery. Fact 2, he stole thousands from our joint account. Fact 3, he accumulated massive secret debt. Fact 4, he was funding a secret life, likely with another woman. These were the pillars of my case. Sophia called me midday, her voice laced with concern. "How are you holding up? What's the plan?" she asked. "The plan," I said, looking at the growing pile of documents on the table, "is to let him think he's in control, right up until the moment he realizes he has none." I explained my next crucial step. I was going to file a police report about the forgery. This was the point of no return. A marital dispute was a civil matter. A felony was a criminal one. It would elevate the situation from a messy divorce to a state prosecution. "Are you sure?" Sophia asked gently. "Once you do that, you can't take it back. It's out of your hands." "I'm sure," I replied, my voice hard. "He left me stranded 50 miles from home based on a crime he committed. He showed no concern for my safety or well-being. Why should I show any concern for his future? He made his choice. Now he gets to live with the consequences." That afternoon, I drove with my father to the local state police barracks. I brought my folder of evidence, including the screenshot from the DMV website and my written affidavit. I sat down with a state trooper who listened patiently, his expression growing more serious as I laid out the facts. He examined the title document I had a copy of, noting the "and" between our names. He took my statement and looked over the bank records. "Ma'am," he said when I was finished, "title forgery is a Class D felony in this state. We take this very seriously. We will open an investigation immediately." He gave me a case number and his card and told me a detective would be in touch. Walking out of that police station was a strange experience. It was terrifying and liberating all at once. The legal machine was now in motion, a force far greater than Leo's lies and manipulations. The chessboard was set. I had made my opening move. Now it was time to let Leo make his. I knew he would call, expecting me to have come home on the bus, ready to be either yelled at or placated. I decided I wouldn't answer. Silence would be my next move. Let him wonder. Let him worry. His world of confident control was about to crumble, and I wanted him to feel every single stone fall. For 2 days, I followed my own rule, complete and total silence. Leo called, he texted. The messages started as annoyed, "Camilla, where are you? Call me." Then moved to concerned, "Are you okay? I'm getting worried." And finally landed on accusatory, "What kind of game are you playing? You're being completely childish." It was fascinating to watch his thought process unfold in my notifications. He genuinely believed he was the victim, that my refusal to come home and quietly accept his betrayal was an act of childish rebellion. He had no concept of the storm that was gathering. His sister Isabel also started calling and texting, leaving messages dripping with false concern and underlying judgment. "Camilla, dear, Leo is worried sick. Whatever little spat you two are having, you need to come home and sort it out like adults. Don't be so dramatic." I ignored them all. My silence was a vacuum, and I knew it was making them desperate. They were used to a predictable world where their actions didn't have real consequences. On Wednesday morning, I drove to my firm. I didn't go to my own desk. I went straight to Mr. Davison's office. He stood up as I entered, greeting me not as an employee, but as a client. We spent 2 hours mapping out the divorce proceedings. He was ruthless and efficient. We would file for divorce on the grounds of financial infidelity and fraud. We would petition for an emergency court order to freeze all his assets, including his personal and business accounts, to prevent him from hiding or spending any more money. And we would seek a settlement where I received the full value of the house, given that he had squandered our liquid assets. He committed a felony to steal your shared property, Camilla, Mr. Davison said, his voice grim. In the eyes of a family court judge, that will obliterate his credibility. We're not just asking for a fair settlement, we're asking for restitution. The plan was set for the confrontation. I couldn't keep the car hidden forever, and the police would eventually need to contact him. I wanted to be the one to deliver the news. I wanted to see his face. That evening, I drove my dad's truck back to the house I had shared with Leo. I had Sophia on standby, ready to call the police if things escalated, and my dad was waiting in his truck just down the street. I used my key to let myself in. The house was quiet. A stack of mail was on the counter, and a glass was left by the sink. It looked so normal it made me sick. Leo was in his home office, the door slightly ajar. I could hear him on the phone, his voice low and agitated. "I don't know where she is," he was saying. "No, Mike, I don't have the money right now, just give me a few more days." So, the buyer was already demanding his money back. The first crack in his plan. I pushed the door open. He looked up, his face a mixture of shock and relief, which quickly morphed into anger. "Camilla, where the hell have you been? I've been calling for days." He stood up from his desk, his posture aggressive. "You don't get to disappear like that." I remained standing by the door, my purse held in front of me like a shield. "I've been busy," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I was filing a police report." The color drained from his face. What are you talking about?" "I filed a report for felony title forgery, Leo. I spoke with a detective this morning. They have a copy of the fraudulent title you filed with the DMV. They found it quite interesting." He stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. He looked like a fish out of water, gulping for air that wasn't there. "You wouldn't," he whispered, shaking his head in disbelief. "It's a marital issue. You can't be serious." "A felony is not a marital issue," I said, taking a step forward and placing a thick manila envelope on his desk. "These are for you, they're divorce papers, and a motion for an emergency order to freeze all your assets. As of an hour ago, a judge signed it. Your bank accounts are frozen, Leo, all of them." He sank into his chair, looking at the envelope as if it were a snake. The arrogant, confident man I knew had vanished, replaced by a pale, trembling stranger. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "It was just a car. I was going to fix everything." "You left me stranded on the side of a highway, Leo," I said, my voice rising with the force of all the pain and anger I had suppressed. "You forged my name, drained our accounts, and lied to my face for months, maybe years. You didn't do this to fix things. You did this to save yourself from a mess you created with your gambling and your secrets." His sister Isabel chose that exact moment to let herself in the front door, no doubt summoned by Leo for backup. She walked in, ready for a fight. "Camilla, there you are. What is all this nonsense about you running off?" She stopped short when she saw the look on her brother's face and the legal documents on his desk. "What's going on?" she demanded. Leo didn't answer. He just stared at me, the full weight of his actions finally crashing down on him. "I spoke to a detective, Leo," I repeated, letting the words sink in. "They know about the forgery. They know about the gambling debts. They know everything." The unveiling was complete. There were no more lies for him to hide behind. It was just him, the truth, and the consequences. And as I looked at the ruins of the man I once loved, I felt nothing but the cold, clean satisfaction of justice. The aftermath was a cascade of consequences, each one a direct result of the seeds Leo had sown. The asset freeze was immediate and devastating for him. His cards were declined. His access to cash was cut off. He was suddenly powerless, a feeling I knew he had never experienced before. The legal battle was swift and brutal. Mr. Davison was a shark, and Leo, represented by a court-appointed lawyer because he couldn't afford a private one, was completely outmatched. The felony charge hung over the entire proceedings. In family court, his forgery was presented as the ultimate act of financial misconduct and bad faith. He tried to argue that I was being vindictive, that it was a simple mistake made under duress. But the evidence was overwhelming. The bank statements, the credit card bills detailing his secret life, and the police report painted a clear picture of a man who had systematically deceived and defrauded his wife. The judge was not impressed with him. In the end, the settlement was everything we asked for. I was awarded the house and its equity, as he had effectively stolen and gambled away our shared liquid assets. I was also awarded the Honda CR-V, with the fraudulent sale officially voided by the court. He was left with his mountain of personal debt, the gambling losses, the money he owed to Mike, and the legal fees that were piling up. His sister Isabel tried to intervene, calling me to plead for her brother. "You're destroying him," she'd cried over the phone. "He made a mistake, but he doesn't deserve this." "He deserves exactly this," I replied calmly. "This is not my doing. This is the logical outcome of his choices. Perhaps you should be asking him why he felt entitled to commit a felony and leave his wife stranded 100 miles from home." She had no answer for that. The family that had enabled his arrogance was now forced to watch him fall. The criminal case proceeded separately. Due to the mountain of evidence and the fact that he had confessed to the forgery over the phone, a detail I included in my affidavit, his lawyer advised him to take a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, avoiding jail time but ending up with 3 years of probation, a hefty fine, and a permanent criminal record. For a financial advisor, a felony conviction, even a pleaded-down one, was a career death sentence. He lost his license, his job, and the respect of his colleagues. The last I heard, he was working a low-wage job, living in a small apartment paid for by his sister. For me, life began to open up in ways I hadn't realized it had been closed off. The first few months were about cleansing. I had the locks on the house changed. I went through every room, packing up every trace of him, his clothes, his books, his ridiculous collection of expensive watches. I donated it all. Sophia and my parents were my pillars of support, helping me paint walls, rearrange furniture, and reclaim the space as my own. The house that had once felt like a cage of secrets slowly started to feel like a sanctuary. I took the Honda CR-V to a mechanic for a full inspection and then to a detailer to have it cleaned from top to bottom. When I got it back, it felt new. It was no longer our car, it was my car. Driving it was no longer a reminder of that horrible day, but a symbol of my resilience. I had taken back control. A year after that fateful weekend, my life is unrecognizable in the best possible way. I'm still at the same law firm, but Mr. Davison promoted me. He said my handling of my own case showed an initiative and legal acumen that deserved recognition. I'm now a senior paralegal with more responsibility and a significant pay raise. I've started traveling, not to the grand destinations Leo used to promise, but to small, interesting places I wanted to see for myself. I took a weekend trip to the coast, a road trip through the mountains. I paid for it all with my own money, drove my own car, and answered to no one. One evening, sitting on my porch, the same porch swing my dad and I used to sit on, I held up my 2 sets of keys. One was for my house, the other for my car. They were simple, ordinary objects, but to me, they represented everything. They were my security, my freedom, my independence. Leo had tried to take them from me, but in the end, his betrayal had given me a gift I never would have sought for myself. The chance to build a life that was truly, entirely my own. And as the sun set, I smiled. I was finally home.